Welcome to The Heritage Show. I'm your host, Ling. This podcast celebrates stories of healing, empowerment, and resilience, featuring women who are breaking barriers and inspiring changes. Today, I'm beyond thrilled to introduce you part one of a special two-part series with Zandile Ndhlovu, South Africa's first Black female freediving instructor and the founder of the Black Mermaid Foundation. Her incredible journey has been featured on the Discovery Channel's Shark Week, and she is honoree of a BBC 100 Women list of 2023. I'm honored to share her story with you. Let's dive into part one of this conversation. Hello, Zandile. Thank you so much for joining my podcast, The Heritage Show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you. So I will jump right in with our episode. My first question is, what is your mission and what are the impacts would you like to make in this world?
Oh, jumping straight in properly.
Yeah.
What is my mission? My mission is to diversify the ocean space so that it looks like all of us. I think the beauty of our oceans in exploration and science, traditionally, it has always looked one way. And I just think from a South African perspective, it's so powerful to have all hands on deck. And that means to have Black and brown people in the water, as well as, in South Africa, our oceans are majority white. And so it's just the work of diversifying that representation in a way that sees us have more diverse representation in ocean-facing careers, sports, but also recreationally, how we interface with the water. The impact that I hope to have in the world is the idea that no one narrative is the end all, right? The impact is it's the hope to see our seas be as diverse as we are on land, and the thought leaders and thought processes to look like everybody, to look like all of us, because that's how we create lasting impact in the world.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I love that you mentioned about the diversity in our ocean and the path that you're pursuing as an ocean conservationist. And I'm wondering, in such a field as, let's say, traditionally very male-dominated, maybe more white male-dominated field, how did you manage to carve out your space in this domain? Because I had similar experience working in engineering construction industry before. I was almost always the only woman in the room, and it's a tough journey. I really learned a lot, I grew a lot, but it's not easy. So how did you find your space and get the respect?
It's interesting because it's needing to have agreement with yourself that you're going to upset people. And that's okay, because people love to keep the status quo, the status quo. This is how things have always been. And they ask you to play under those rules. And I think for me, it was from when I qualified, going on to become South Africa's first Black female freediving instructor, there was a very clear knowing that if we're going to create opportunity, we'd have to upset the old. And so from my wetsuit not fitting properly because it just was not made for my body, to language, to my hair being so massive and my hair behaving differently to what has always been normal, I knew that I would need to carve out a space that creates freedom in all kinds of existence. And so it was to speak my truth unapologetically. It was to show up continuously in truth and to challenge and to not be afraid to upset the room, because if you bow down enough, everybody hopes that you never look up. And I think that's a power in how we charter new roads. We show up, shoulders straight, clear with what we have to say, and not afraid of creating an upset.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I can really resonate what you mentioned about speaking your truth and not afraid of upsetting others, which has not been my strong suit since years, because I grew up in China, in our East Asia culture, we always seek harmony. We look up to authority. We want to also look after more of let's say group interest more than ourselves, which is really great culture heritage that I respect. I still practice when it comes to the time of benefit for us. But at times it also costs us because then we are afraid of speaking up, especially as a woman. So on this point, actually, about speaking truth, I realized that you had pursued such a unconventional life path from consulting and changing to becoming the first Black South Africa freediving instructor, which was really remarkable. And I wonder, how was that journey look like? What kind of inner dialogue steps that you took to reach and achieve that transformation?
It's interesting because, going back to tradition, so I come from a very traditional people background, and our first identifier as a people is that we are filled with respect. And like you say, we seek harmony. The woman always respects the man. You're not always looking up, talking to the man directly. And so you move into this big world and you realize that there are such powerful parts of you that are kept for home, and the world will need to meet what the world, how the world exists. But to go back to your question, please ask the question again.
Yeah, so the question was about how did you achieve this transformation of career path or lifestyle from a consultant to become a freediving instructor and ocean conservationist?
I love this question because when I left consultancy, I had no clue. I had no idea what people do to earn an income in this world. I was not a scientist, and so I had no clue. But the internal dialogue was to listen to my heart. My heart wanted to see in ways that I could never imagine. My heart wanted a world that I had never seen before. And so the internal conversation said I had to trust the process. I did not know where I was going, but I had to trust that the strength of my show up would build the world that I see in my mind's eye. And in my mind's eye was the first thing, realizing that the space is incredibly undiverse. Why is that? Number two, what happens in my community that is a belief system that is not helping the lack of diversity that we're seeing here? Three, what does it mean to realize that history matters? So what I'm looking at today as undiverse oceans is not by mistake, but it is by design. South Africa comes from a hard history. And so there were all of these conversations that I needed to have within myself. And in transitioning from a head-strong world to a heart-strong world was to let my heart lead. And I think what to this day remains probably the most powerful thing was that the heart dreams without boundaries. The mind is incredible in that it picks up information and it calculates probabilities based on what it has seen. But the power of the heart is that it doesn't know different. It just knows the biggest dream, and to just run. And to let my heart run is where we stand today.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love when you talk about lead by your heart. And this has been also a learning for me over the years. For many of us, I think we grow up in the society and the system that we often focus so much on performance, success, money, status. A lot, of course, would be very beneficial if we are led by our head, because this helps us be operationally very efficient, very powerful, motivated. But oftentimes we're missing the piece of our heart. And because of this, a lot of us feel lost, because what after, right? What's after you get the money, get the status? So I wonder, are there any specific tips or advice that you could share with our audience on how to connect better with our heart? Because often a lot of people ask me, I cannot feel my heart. I don't know where to access it. So what do you think?
It's such a funny question because it's a funny answer.
Uh-huh.
It is to sit in silence and to keep on asking the question. If I have to tell you how I found my heart, I'd love to tell you. It was in 2020. So we're going through lockdown and the world is closed down. And I start having date nights with myself. Something inside of me knew that I needed to listen deeper. So I start having these date nights with myself. I cook the greatest meal. I dress up like I'm going on a date, but the date is with myself. So you cook, shower, get dressed, come down, eat. No television, no phone, no music, silence.
Yeah.
And the first dinner, it was every Wednesday night. The first dinner was silent, awkward, lasted 30 minutes. The second dinner was also short, but I knew that I had to keep showing up to the date with the deeper. Something was happening. Maybe 3 or 4 dinners later, my heart started speaking. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And usually when the heart speaks, the mind is like, that's not possible. You don't have enough money to do that. You can't just do that. Do you know enough about that? The brain starts saying, justify to me why you think you can do that. Because from what I know, from your bank account, from this, from that, you can't. And then maybe date night 6, the brain stops. It stops. So the heart says, I want to go to Cambodia. The brain is silent. When I get to Cambodia, I want to go on 5,000 boats. And it was interesting because my date nights went from being 30 minutes to being 4 to 5 hours of silence. And it was the most powerful place in my life. And again, it's the space where your brain stops showing up with the calculator to say, this is possible and this is not possible. But it's just a space of just allowing your heart to dream free. Sounds crazy, right?
It's crazy, but yet so true. I totally feel this journey that has been also similar on my side of Vipassana silence meditation retreat, similar in a way that I had to confront a lot of my inner world, inner conversation, inner insight, pain. And I found that extremely profound when you open the space for being with yourself. Could be a beautiful date night, as you mentioned, could be a silent retreat, could be perhaps just sitting down for 5 minutes every day in the morning, just listen inside and just do some self-inquiry. Who am I? What I want deeply in life? What can I do differently? So thank you so much for sharing. I love that idea for a date night on Wednesday evening. Perhaps I'll do it next Wednesday as well. Thank you. Amazing.
I absolutely loved it. And you're right. I love the way that you say, other people express it with Vipassana. They actually go to places that encourage that silence. But in a world where we can't always just, there are people who are mothers who have so many other responsibilities. Can you find 5 minutes, 10 minutes, no phone, no music, nothing, and just meet yourself and then start your day?
Yeah. Something profound will start to show up in your life and give you insight and hint that you can continue to explore totally. And you mentioned something very interesting in the process of your date night experience. You talked about this part when your heart speaks, your mind will jump out and say, don't do this because you don't have money or what others would judge you for. Oftentimes we have this fear coming up when we would like to pursue something different. We want to change our lives. But there sometimes could be also fear that means we are actually on the correct path. Perhaps it's more of a fear of performance anxiety or fear that I cannot do it. So how do you distinguish between the healthy fear of this is challenging, I'm out of my comfort zone, versus this kind of negative fear of like stopping us from pursue something is true for us?
This is such a good question because it's such a powerful question, because we always question ourselves. But I've learned that there is nothing that we begin wanting that does not want us back equally, if not more. The wanting is born inside of us for a reason. That's one. But for me, part of my journey was learning to walk with my fear, realizing that fear is not the only emotion in the room. There is excitement, there is awe, there is possibilities that are outflowing through your body. But because your fear is the loudest, it gets the most space, and then we hide away from it. And for me, the journey was learning to touch my fear, because every time I didn't touch it, it felt bigger than me. And so if you touch your fear, why am I afraid? What is it about this that could go wrong? And if I failed, so what? I don't have to. My only identifier is not perfection. My only identifier is not achievement. It is the hope to have tried. It is the courage to try. And I think that has been my journey. When I think of, the very big fear, it's to go back to it and hold its hand. Hey, buddy, you're not the only one in the room, number one. Number two, I hear you. I acknowledge the fear, but we're doing it. And every single time I've stepped into that circle of fear, my world has expanded in ways I could have never imagined. And so for me, now I know that fear is a big indicator for me. It's like, ooh, there can't be another massive world out there. And then you step inside. And like in Frozen, it's just like, as you step, the worlds open up. It's such a powerful indicator. Such a powerful indicator.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I have such deep connection with what you mentioned about kind of going through this fear of allowing it to be there, but also recognize there are so many other voices and emotions, including excitement, curiosity, this wondering, what if I try this? It's almost like the moment when I get into freediving was the time I was doing scuba diving. I was doing my safety stop, like 5 meters, super boring. And I look up, there was a beautiful woman with just wetsuit, no oxygen tank, like dive down, glide, and then took picture of octopus. And then she just like so free and so beautiful. And I look at her and I said to myself, oh my God, I want to be like her. I want to do this. What is this? So I started to explore this sports. And of course, the first few weeks was terrifying because I stuck at 1.5 meter, 0.9 meter. I couldn't go down because I was so scared of breaking my eardrum. And I couldn't equalize. I was panicking. So like you said, the fear was just holding me back and I couldn't do anything. With time, I realized, wow, there are so many other components in these sports. The feeling of going to the ocean and the moment my face is in the water, it's such a magical experience. So I just totally feel what you mentioned about this point. And thank you so much for sharing. I would love to ask you, what was your first freediving experience, or what was the aha moment actually draw you into freediving?
I'd love to tell you. So I'd started scuba diving, of course, and absolutely loved it. But the whole story starts 2016. I'm in Bali. I go on a snorkel trip. The snorkel trip is so incredible. Yes, there was fear, but I could not believe the colors. Could not believe how beautiful it was when I looked beneath the water for the first time. So then I come back into the country. I start scuba diving. I start just racking up my certificates, right? And then in 2018, I see these girls on Instagram. So I I don't even know. I'm scrolling on Instagram and I see these girls diving down, no tanks on their backs. Sharks are in the frame, seagrass is in the frame, and in the back was Alan Watts saying, "It doesn't matter what you do with your life." I remember thinking, what kind of witchery is this? What daylight witchery is this? So I immediately go onto Google and I type diving without tank. Google says free diving. And I just fall into a hole of saying, I think this is what I want. I think this is what I've been looking for. Because the feeling that I had in 2016 in Bali, I hadn't had it again. And so the question was, where is it? I've been looking for it in my scuba dives. And I got an opportunity to first tease into it in Cape Town on a little adventure course. And then I went on a full-on course. But from the first moment, when I looked beneath the surface, without all the gear, there was the feeling. And when I dived down, there was that feeling of home again. And I just knew. In that moment, I knew that I was leaving the life that I'd always known. I'd found this feeling again, and I was never going to let it go.
Wow. Nice. I love it. I love the stories. I found so many similarities in our stories about this moment of joy, the moment of the feeling that we love, and then continues following this feeling. And on this point, I've recently met a lot of women who are also in their time period of transition. They would love to explore a different career path, maybe move to a new country, learn something new. But oftentimes they found it really difficult how to exactly find that hobby or passion or the job that you would love to pursue, because I suppose we are quite lucky in that sense. We had just bumped into freediving. But how do you go about actually finding this new passion or path that would make sense for our audience to try it out?
That is such a hard question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer either, but happy to bounce back ideas.
I love the idea of the power in not knowing. There is something that is so loud in a world that speaks of speaking humans, things that you can Google, things that you can read to learn more about any one thing, but then silence with your heart. You know what makes your heart sing. And I found that in my journey, one of my biggest frustrations in the world was, I think racism is crazy, right? I can't fathom it. But when I started working in corporate, there was an entire world that said, oh, no, that's just how it is. And I'm like, excuse me, get somebody else to do it. But it bothered me my entire life. And even when I moved into consultancy, it was again working to bridge the gap in how we communicate, in how we make space for each other. So what I do in the ocean today is no different to that Zandi who was 21 years old asking, why do you treat me like that? And trying to find the answers. And I had the opportunity to go learn more about facilitating dialogue, which is what our consultancy ended up doing. And now in the ocean space, I say, the space is undiverse. How do we make it more diverse? How do we create the invitation? How do we make sure that everybody who looks at these seas that we're all trying to protect can see themselves reflected in these waters? When we think of climate change, it will most likely affect us on the African continent more than anybody else. There is a need to call from a love perspective, but there is a need to call from a care perspective that says, looking to the future, we need leaders in country, in continent, who can lead the discussion. So how do we, so I find that my dream has come in steps. It started by saying, I'm going to start a foundation and take kids out. I hadn't asked anybody for money. I hadn't asked. All I knew is that at the end of my salary, whatever was left, I was going to go pick up the kids and take them out into the water. That's all I knew. And then the brands started coming. And then someone said, can I tell you a story? And then CNN said, can we tell you a story? And then, but the base point has always been a love for the ocean and a hope to create that connection. And as I journeyed and understood the challenges, was more of an invitation and a growing to now being a full-time water person, right? I live in the water full-time. But it started with this thing in my heart that said, I don't want to be the only one who's ever witnessed her beauty. I want to bring this back to my community. And it's just grown and grown and grown.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The growing from a seed to some big trees and maybe forest. I see that the path was so beautiful and inspiring. And I hear some keywords when you talk about something happened in your career, you would ask, why it's like this? Or the ocean is not diverse in that field. Why it's like this? I think this curiosity and this hard calling could open the first door for us. And then we step out the first step and then the next one, and things will coming to us when we are on our true calling. Really love this. Another point I really want to get back to about this love and sense of care and bigger purpose, becoming an ocean conservationist.
Yeah.
Become an ocean conservationist. So my question is, could you share some of your perspective on how can we use our passion, our curiosity, skill set as well to find something that is purposeful, something that is bigger than us? Because oftentimes when we get caught up in our day-to-day, we felt lack of purpose, lack of contribution, and not being at service to bigger community or society. How do you go about finding this way?
Wow, these are hard questions. It's a funny thing. So as women, we are first told to care for the greater community before ourselves. We are raised to take care of everyone else before ourselves. We're raised to put everyone else first. And there's such a power in the moment when you decide to put yourself first. So when I think of when I left consulting to move into freediving and all things that were ocean facing, my first question was, because when we grow up and you start working, you're helping out in the family, you're helping out in the extended family, you're helping out in different places. And I remember saying, if we're going to die, we're going to die. But I've done my time and I'm going to go and chase what Zandi wants. This is what I want. And it wasn't easy because to be selfish is very looked down upon. And in this moment, I had to choose myself. And in the choosing myself, I still knew that I still have responsibilities. And I often laugh about it now and I say, I'm lucky that I landed on my feet, because had I not landed on my feet, I would have, my family, it would have been a really horrible discussion. But also, I don't even know if I would have even wanted to go back to, corporate world and consulting. But I had to first choose myself. And when I chose myself, I had the opportunity to explore and expand into this world. And then all the opportunities started coming. So I think for me, I want to always encourage us, when we could never fathom choosing ourselves first, to stand in that truth, 10 toes down. I'm sorry, this is what I'd like to do. And you give yourself the chance. And for me, it was a year. And in that year, everything changed. Yeah. And I think it always comes back to me as, we're first told to serve, and we do serve, but from that journey, now I serve on an even greater capacity. but it
Right.
also meant standing at the altar of Zandi and saying, what do you want? How do
Yeah.
I make you happy? Nothing else
Mm.
matters. Wake up, Zandi, what do you want to eat? You know? And I think that
Yeah,
was powerful in that year of choosing me.
absolutely. I loved this message. It's so empowering because I, as a burnout prevention and resilience coach, I work with a lot of women who had burnout or at the verge of burning out. And I see similarity in terms of the root cause often will result from putting everything, everyone else in front of myself. So when we start to put ourselves at the bottom of the priority list in our life, that's when we start to burn out. And the first thing usually I would suggest them is to throw out everything in your life that you think you perceive as important than yourself and put yourself in the first, and to start extend love to yourself, start practice self-care, start to wake up, like you said, ask what I want, what is good for me, what
Yeah.
is nourishing my soul and my body and my mind. I think this is so essential for us to start to cultivate an inner strength, the energy, the joy, the fulfillment, so we can start to serve others better with a greater capacity, as you highlighted. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, thank you
Thank you.
so much.
And I want to share, the full glass analogy.
Yeah,
So you can't feed others when you are at a drop of yourself.
yeah,
And you learn more about how much more beautiful and how much more abundant you are when you overflow like a spring, instead of
yeah,
trying to pull out the last drop. And that drop is not even for you, it's for someone else. So that filling up of the cup in love, in time, in show up, in, I often say the love we give another, our best friends, could we give it to ourselves? Could we be that kind to ourselves?
mm-hmm.
And then you end up being an incredible human, an even better person.
Totally love it. And on this point of self-love, I know you have so many roles that you are playing as a freediving instructor, as a public speaker, as an ocean conservationist, and ocean advocate. So many initiatives you're taking. I imagine you're extremely busy. How do you actually balance all those commitments, yet still protect, preserve your own well-being?
This is such a powerful question. And I'm actually so proud to tell you this, right? Like, this is such a proud moment. In 2022, I had a burnout. I felt I felt so burnt out in July. Then I just thought my burnout looks a particular way. Last year, in November, I was in LA, 6 weeks in the US, and I was getting ready for my last talk. And an email came in and I just started crying. I did not stop crying until I left the coffee shop, got into the car, got into bed, cried that's when I knew I was burned. And this year, we are in the beginning of December and have consistently held, right? And so it's the idea that you don't know what you don't know. You push so hard and then your body breaks. And
Yeah.
this year I implemented rest. So I love the sea. I work in the sea. I work with the sea, but I take time out to have her where it's just me and her, no one else, not a film crew, not the children in the foundation, not friends, just me and her. My first love, that first love. So for me, that's how I rest. I rest by reading books, get off all of social media, get off everything. My books, I must smell them. I love to smell my books.
Oh, love it. Me too.
Um, right?
Yeah.
And I love solitude. That's how I pour back. So how I pour back is silence. I can be silent for an entire week. I don't talk to anybody for 3 days. Just just listening and reading and writing, because not everything needs to be said. And then I go swim by myself and I dive, and I know that you shouldn't always never free dive alone, but
Yes,
you
never
can
free dive
swim
alone.
and play and be. And so that's my journey. Solitude for me is when I get to hear the best parts of me, because in our head, with the work that we do, you're always on the go. You're always on a flight. When you're not on the flight, as you land, you're responding to emails. You're in a Uber and you're picking up phone calls, getting to the set. And there's just so much that we do. And that silence brings us back to who we are outside of everything else that we do. And I think that's a powerful place to know where to find it at any point when you need it.
So true. The silence, the pause, the time for yourself, whatever fuel your soul. And I love that you mentioned about reading as well. You know, the touch of the paper, the smell, the place that you put the bookmark. It's so amazing. I love it too. On this very related topic, I would love to know what would be the book that you would recommend us to read that perhaps had some profound impact to you.
Hands down, The Alchemist. Hands down, Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist. I've probably read it 6 times already since I found it in 2016, 2015. That's the most powerful book. And you have to read it without the voice in your head that says, that book is power. I still go back to it today. When I can't find myself, you'll find me locked up with The Alchemist, reading, dreaming, seeing in my mind's eye.
Yeah. I love to read it right after this call. I will just go on Amazon and buy it. Thank you so much. And I curious also to know, as you mentioned about earlier, how did you get into freediving and later become freediving instructor? I'm a freediver myself too. I've learned so many lessons from training, fun diving, dry training. A lot of those had changed my life in the ways that I would have never imagined. And I'm curious, on your side of the story, what lessons has freediving taught you and had changed your life?
I would say 3 things actually. 1, the power of releasing of expectation, releasing of the future hope of how you want that dive to go, releasing of not starting well when you start your dive, and that starts impacting how your dive is going. The power of release, because we grow up in a world that tells us to look forward and look back. Where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years' time? And it's this idea of an additional world that's not here. So the release of expectation, and this is a scary second part of the release, but to release your desperate hold on life. So when you think of this one breath and you're diving down to 30 meters or 100 feet, I got stuck at 23 meters for almost 7 months. I had this massive breath hold and I couldn't do anything with it because the fear was so great. What if I free fall enough and I can't surface in time and I swallow the sea and I die, right? So you have these massive pictures of you in your head. And so for me, it was the release of this desperate grasp to life. It was the realization that if I'm going to go on this journey, I must go into this journey understanding that I am competent, I'm able to do this, and this is not about my fear, but it is about all the places that I'll go with myself. So release of the future space, but also release of the fear of death. And as I released that, I could go deeper. I hit 30 meters, hit 35 meters. And started to access the powerful space of the free fall. Oh, I could talk endlessly about the free fall. So that's one. Two, the power of being present, how the gift is in the now. The gift is not built in the future, it's built in the now. And again, when you're freediving, you are at 15 meters, let's say, whether 15 meters and you've got another 15 meters to go, or you're coming up from the bottom and you've got another 15 meters ahead of you, you're always encouraged to not look up, face the line, be present, be nowhere else but with the line. And so you begin to see like light flood in, and your your contractions are beyond belief. But you can see the light, but you have no idea how far it is. And it gives you so much perspective on the power of being present. Because if you look up, you start panicking. If you look down, you start panicking. There's so many things. And 3, freediving taught me how to breathe. It took me 30 years to learn how to breathe, how to use my breath in a room, how to use my breath when I'm afraid, how to use my breath when I'm about to share something that is truth and that I'm afraid to place in the room. All of a sudden, I travel with my breath and it sits in my belly and I know that I'm safe. Those are my lessons.
Wonderful. I love it. I resonate with every single point you highlighted. The first part on just really let go of the outcome, the depths you want to reach, the time that you want to get your PB, personal best. Totally. Like this year, I was on a competition. I was really frustrated before the competition because I was training really hard, but my body was just not helping me. I was sick. I was tired. I want to get to a certain depth, but my training was just not getting there. And then one point I was training with my best friend, and she said, just come with me. We do a fun dive. There's no depth. There's no PB that you need to reach. Just enjoy. Yeah. And then for that dive, I just let go all of this expectation, as you said. I just enjoy the ocean. I enjoy the company of my best friend. I was there maybe at 30 or 40 meter. I was like, wow, this is a point of freediving. It's not about the depth I want to reach. So that surrender to the beauty, to the joy, to the fun moment itself, it just saved me from all the struggles. And the second point on the being present is so undervalued in our busy day-to-day. And I think this is such a powerful mindset and ability, a skill that we actually could cultivate in our day-to-day life to really just be at now, being in our body and enjoy this very moment that we are having this conversation. Yeah. And then the last about the breath, I was reading the book as well, The Breath. I would highly recommend that book because as you said, so many of us, including myself, had neglected this powerful transformative tool that we are carrying day to day, 24 hours. And it can really help us release stress, anxiety, help us anchor to our present moment. And it's just a life-changing tool that we have. And maybe on this point, I'd love to ask you, what specific breath exercise technique that you do or practice, not only for freediving, but for your life, so our audience can actually take away and start to practice?
I would say I want to go deep, but I don't want to go deep. The practice of an actual full breath. Because we breathe shallow, generally, we breathe into our chest. And I'll never forget the first time I felt the power of a full breath. It came all the way through here and I was clicking the back of my neck from one full breath. And
Wow.
so that tells us that we don't do enough with our breath. And so for me, in the morning, to feel my breath fill up my belly, fill up my chest, fill up on the sides, and then come up right at the top here, and then click my back, that's when you begin to understand how powerful your breath is. So for me, it would always be learn and be with the place of the full breath. We don't breathe fully in. And so when you take those big breaths and that slow exhale, whether you're counting, I love to count. So it's like a count of 16 or a count of 20, the most massive exhale, and there's nothing left in your body. And then you
Can
inhale.
you do this for us? Maybe on this right moment. I love to practice this with you. Let's get hands on.
Yes, hand on chest, hand on belly. And then start with an exhale and then follow with an inhale. Oh,
wow, that was a long breath. Thank you for guiding us. Amazing.
I'm in love. I'm in love.
Yeah, I feel so present now. I feel connected directly with you, even though we are sitting across a screen. Thank you so much.
How amazing is it? Like, I still can't believe how we take our breath for granted. Can't believe it took me 30 years to understand the power that I hold within me. I could go on.
Yeah.
The water's taught me a lot. I could go on.
Let's do a separate episode just on the breath. I love that. Okay, so come back to the breath. I think this is also a relevant topic because probably only freediver would understand those very essential skill set we have to practice to be able to do better and enjoy more the fun of freediving, which include breath hold, our flexibility, lung flexibility, our body flexibility, equalization, how to equalize our ear under the water. Of course, we also should nourish our body to be fit and have a healthy heart to be able to deal with the physical challenge underwater, and also more importantly, be really relaxed in the water.
Yeah.
And all of those skills are actually sounds very bizarre, but very relevant for our lives as well. So I wonder, are there any other exercise in addition to the breath work that you just taught us that actually derived from freediving that our audience can start to perhaps learn a little bit and implement in their life to have a more well-balanced lifestyle?
So I enjoy yoga, but I also enjoy breath hold yoga. So stretching my body while I'm in a hole, doing exercises, lifting kettlebells while I'm in a hole. The whole idea of just saying, how can my body function? How can I push its ability further and further? But for me, I always say it just starts with stillness. Like, be still. If you can be still with your breath, you can go many places. Yoga, for me, I think our ability to bend our bodies is such a gift. And that's something that we should continuously nurture. And that's what yoga gives. Yoga opens up your hips. Yoga opens up your chest. Yoga opens up your shoulders. And if you think of the places that, particularly as women, where we hold stress, it's often in our thighs. It's in that, what's that bone?
Side.
Yeah, we hold so much pressure in that thigh area. So to just open up your legs, to be moving in that space, to create space in your I know I'm gonna find the name, the word for that spot that I'm talking about. But for me, it is to stretch our bodies, because that's how you keep a healthy body. That's how your whole body remembers that movement is not only walking, movement is not only running, movement is not only lifting. Movement is slow movements that's creating space in your joints, especially with your breath. Man, that is everything. With your breath, yeah. That's the apple a day. Apple a day. That's an apple a day.
Apple a day. Sorry.
So it's often said that an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
An apple a day.
Yes, an apple a day.
Got you.
Yeah.
I was wondering, what's that? Got you.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love this combination you mentioned about stillness, the ability to sit with ourselves and be quiet and listen in. And also the movement part of stretching, creating space, because especially for those who work a lot in front of computer, we just like so stressed and everything was becoming so small and not spacious. And I think yoga and stretching, like yin yoga, and slow movement can really help us create this spaciousness, not only in our body, but also start to gradually open our heart for our life as well.
I love that. Yes.
Super. Thank you for tuning in to part 1 of this inspiring conversation with Zandile. If you enjoyed it, please share it and subscribe to The Heritage Show. And let me know who you'd like to see the next. Stay tuned for part 2 of this conversation, where Zandile and I discuss the importance of play, creativity, and community in personal growth and ocean advocacy. See you next time.